Hey guys, Phil Baumhardt here. So for today's video, I wanted to show you Swords of the Viking Age by Ian Pearce. This is a freaking awesome resource if you're interested in Viking swords. It really gets into some of the nitty-gritty details as far as the archaeology is concerned. So if you're looking to make your own Viking sword, you have to have this book. And if you're just interested in Vikings, you're still going to enjoy it. It's a thin book, but it's got a lot of pictures. So let me show you what's inside. Okay, so there's what the cover looks like. And right off the get-go, there's a nice diagram of the nomenclature, the different parts of the sword. So there's kind of a consistent language for the book. That's a really great resource right off the bat. There's our table of contents. And the introduction is by Oakshot, who, if you don't know who he is the one that came up with the typology of different European swords, starting with Viking swords, but then going through all the swords all the way up into the Renaissance. So really groundbreaking work there, and you know, if you're a sword guy, I'm sure you already know who he is, but for those who aren't, this is a nice introduction to him. He wrote a lot of great books about swords that I might cover in other videos. But so there's an example of his typography. This actually might be the typography of Jan Petersen. That's kind of the guy who started, yeah, there you go, Wheeler typology, I'm sorry. But typology of based on the design of the hilt, you know, different swords. The hilt design changed as time went on. There's another diagram later on in here. He also goes over the swords with inscriptions. So you got, you know, your Ulfbert blade, of course, Ingolri, but there's a few others, and he goes into detail on those, which is nice. And he also cites some of the Viking sagas, Icelandic sagas, and the swords that were used in those sagas. And then there's another overview of the sword typology, where it goes into a little bit more detail with that, as far as where different types were found, what time periods they were from. You know, it kind of specifies, you know, okay, this was a Anglo-Saxon design, like this one right here is an Anglo-Saxon type hilt, and then the you know, there were some other swords that were found almost exclusively in Norway, so that's like they speculate a Norwegian design of hilt. So it goes through all of that, really interesting stuff. You've got it kind of talks a little bit about the you know, single-edged swords and the double-edged swords, and talks about the differences in those. There's also a typology based on the design of the blade. And so I guess, you know, older blades would be fitted with new hilts as time went on. So that's kind of why the typology is based on hilts rather than blades. But, you know, they do break down the different types of blades, which is nice. So then there's a few plates. These are some watercolors from 1889, excuse me. So these are really neat, you know. They were discovering Viking artifacts, and, you know, they didn't have good enough photography methods there. They just had to sketch them or paint them. So, and these are just as good, if not better than photographs. So here are some color photos of different swords. The rest of the book is all in black and white. I'm sure that's to try to keep the cost down. They talk a little bit about the different design patterns, so where they've inscribed the hilt and then laid silver and copper wire in there. Sometimes they've braided the wire, so really neat how they went about decorating the swords. And this is the meat of it, the catalog of examples that's written by Ian Pearce. And it goes through over 50 swords from all different places, Scandinavia, Europe, England. And so it talks about, let's see, here we go. It'll give you the museum number. So this is C777 if you were to go to this museum in Oslo. But it tells you where the sword is located, but then also the time that the sword comes from in antiquity, where they found it, some of the dimensions of the sword, overall length, blade length, handle length. That's one thing that a lot of the TV shows get wrong, is the length of the sword handle. So shows like Vikings and The Last Kingdom, you know, all the swords have got handles that are way too long. A little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but anyways, I digress. It's really nice that it tells you this information on the sword, because you can find photos of Viking swords online, but you have no idea where it came from, you know, where it's located, what the origin is. You know, this was great for me to finally have something like this where, you know, all the information is here at my fingertips. So Mr. Pierce did a really good job in putting this together. So you can see there's some nice photos. If there's a particular detail about the sword, he'll kind of go into that. So like here's how the decorations are engraved in there. So he's got a little diagram there, close up of the engraving that's on that blade. He had a chance to handle all of these, so he'll talk about the weight and balance and feel of these swords. Some of them are still quite sharp and could be used on a Viking raid today, which is really neat. So that kind of misconception that you know, European swords or Viking swords were you know, dull pry bars, you know, that kind of has gone out the window. Because you got swords that are, you know, over 1,000 years old that could kill somebody today. This is the sword from the cover. This is one found in Ireland, where it's got this kind of grapevine pattern inscribed on there. That's really neat. There's actually 2 of those. This is the second one. He also tells you what typology the different swords are. There's a few examples of the single-edged swords. I already passed those at the beginning. Those seem to be a kind of Norwegian design. And so he also goes into... one nice thing about this book is that you kind of get to see some of the details of some of the inscriptions and decorations on swords, which you can't always get from looking at a you know, smaller photo online. A lot of these, or some of these, were found grave finds. Some of these were grave finds, so he'll kind of go into a little bit of depth as far as what that grave contained, other than the sword, you know, the other weapons and artifacts, and where that grave find was located. So there's lots of you know, accompanying information to a sword that I find really interesting, just from a historical standpoint. And now we're getting into some of the later swords with the longer hilts. Quite a few of these are actually found in Finland, which I thought was kind of neat. There's some later inscriptions. So. And then this is kind of the end of the Viking Age. These aren't Viking swords because they got the disc pommel, but it's still neat that he goes into detail there. So you can kind of get to see some nice photos of how these things were constructed. There's one with a existing handle. That's very rare. But yeah, overall, really great book. This is something that I would recommend to anybody who's interested in swords. And at the very end here, it kind of goes into the how the pattern welded swords were made. So if you're a blacksmith, this is definitely some interesting stuff. So really neat patterns. Some of these patterns, the way that they were able to, you know, do this with that kind of specificity. So really neat patterns that they were able to do, that, you know, to make these specific patterns. You know, it wasn't just sort of random. This really took some significant skill that I certainly don't have, not by a long shot, but maybe one day. But these are some impressive designs. So as the filming of this video, Amazon has got this book for about $35, which is really not a bad price at all. So if you're looking for a Christmas present for yourself, I would definitely recommend picking it up. The cover looks a little bit different, so keep an eye out for that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I appreciate the support. Thanks for watching, and until next time, be more Viking.